our CEO has a phrase where he says, if you take care of the employees, they'll take care of the customers. That is really an underpinning of how we operate.
This makes sense of how this aligns with your core values and your focus on well-being. So
Mm-hmm.
there's no surprise that there's that link that permeates through the organization. Hi everyone, welcome back to the HR Leaders Podcast. On today's episode, I'm joined by Jeri Hawthorne, who's a Chief HR Officer at Aflac, America's most recognized supplemental insurance company. During the episode, Jeri shares Aflac's 5 pillars of well-being, her top tips for choosing the right well-being provider, how to ensure well-being and benefits are communicated effectively, and her number one piece of advice to support employee well-being at work. As always, before we jump into the podcast, make sure you hit the subscribe button, turn the notification bell, and follow on your favorite podcast platform. With that being said, let's jump in. Jeri, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. How you been since we last spoke?
I have been well. I've been busy. You know, it's a little bit of our tax season from an HR perspective because we're in the middle of, finishing bonus calculations and getting ready to pay out our bonuses, and then launching goal setting for next year. So this is a little bit of our, like I said, I refer to it as our tax season.
Yeah, fun times.
Yeah. Well, people are happy when they get their bonuses, so I'll leave it at that. People are usually generally pretty happy at bonus time.
No, but then pressure on you to make it happen.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yes.
Yeah. Before we jump in, tell everyone a little bit more about yourself personally and your journey, and also a little bit about the organization if people aren't aware of the...
I've been in HR for more years than I'm actually pleased to say. Minimum of 20, I'll say it that way. I've touched almost every part of HR in my career. I actually started almost in a backwards way. After graduate school, I worked at Berlitz, which is in their cross-cultural training division. And so we worked with expats who were moving internationally or coming back, and parlayed that into working in international HR, dealing with expat management, employment contracts, etc. Had a great opportunity for a few years where I was actually an expat and lived and worked in Denmark for Novo Nordisk, which was just one of the better experiences I've had. And went from that to leading. I worked for a nonprofit organization where we were opening laboratories in other countries and got to do that, which was really fun. Moved into talent management, moved into financial services at that point, and talent management and kind of the HR business partner role. And then have been in that space ever since. I've worked in energy, financial services, and have been with Aflac since 2019. I've held a couple different roles here, started with our corporate HR team, and then talent management and our employee experience team were added. And now I'm the CHRO for Aflac, our overarching organization. And Aflac is a company where we are actually, I would say we're co-located. Our headquarters are in Columbus, Georgia. We also have a massive operation in Japan where about 80% of our revenue is actually generated. And a lot of folks don't know that. And so it's from an employee size, it's about double the size of our U.S. organization. So we have about 6,000 employees in the U.S. We sell supplemental insurance policies, which are designed to pay the expenses that insurance traditionally doesn't cover. Health insurance wasn't designed to cover all expenses in most cases. And so supplemental insurance is a key part of helping employees to solve kind of that gap in covering their health insurance costs. And everybody knows Aflac through the duck. Those commercials are, in the U.S. in particular, those commercials are significant. In Japan, they are as well. It's done, of course, culturally appropriately there, but the duck is really sort of the big brand recognition that we have here and in Japan.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm glad you mentioned that, because this makes sense of how this, and you tell me if I'm correct, of how this aligns with your core values and your focus on well-being. So there's no surprise that there's that link that permeates through the organization. And that kind of, yeah. So that kind of leads me to my first question. I'd love to learn more about, and you mentioned this in our last conversation, around the 5 pillars of wellness at the organization. Could you share a bit more about that?
Our CEO has a phrase where he says, if you take care of the employees, they'll take care of the customers, right? That is really an underpinning of how we operate. It's not just the right thing to do from a human perspective, but, as an HR leader, I've worked in many organizations where you really have to make sure you're putting the ROI around why you want to offer some of the different ancillary types of benefits. And here it's different. When you have an organization that was founded with a family culture and mentality, and a CEO who understands that, it in some ways makes my job a lot easier, which is lucky. And so, so when we think about wellness for our employees, we really think about it through the lens of the whole employee. And so we think about it not just through kind of that physical wellness, but we also think about emotional well-being and wellness. We think about financial well-being and wellness. We think about spiritual well-being and wellness. And then we think about social, right? So it's not just about being a individual. It's about that social element and what the organization is doing as well. And so, do you want me to go into a little bit about those?
Yeah, of course.
Is that okay, Chris? Okay, sorry. Just if I drone, stop me. I'll just say it that way. So if you're like talking too much about this, because I take a lot of pride and I've not been here long enough to say that I was the architect of it. I'm just the kind of the lucky successor to be able to ride on and enhance some of the things that my predecessors have done in this role. But from a physical perspective, we have our normal health insurance policies. We also do things like we have on-site fitness centers in our main locations. During the pandemic, our population pivoted quite a bit. So we had about 70 or 80% of our folks on site and in a couple of our core locations. During the pandemic, we actually acquired a couple of other companies, and like most other organizations, hiring shifted. And so our population has shifted now to, it's about 50% in our core locations and 50% just dispersed across the US. And so in order to have some equivalent offerings for those folks, we've partnered with GyPass, where we've purchased a service at a base level, and then employees can choose to add on, but it gives them access to use fitness centers in a variety of different locations if they're traveling, gives them discounts to fitness centers in some of the areas where they live. In some instances, they're even free. So that's something that we've done from a physical wellness perspective.
Can I ask a quick
Just
question?
this year,
Can I ask a quick
I'm
question?
sorry. Go ahead. Yes.
One
Sorry.
of the challenges for CHROs I'm speaking to, there's a lot of these services out there that they're being inundated with. Why did you choose GyPass? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah. So it's when we did our evaluation, what we actually found with GyPass at the time was that they were an organization that they were willing to look at places where we had pockets of employees, even if they didn't have partnerships with fitness centers in those areas. If we said, look, we're in Columbus, Georgia, right? It's 90 miles south of Atlanta. On a relative city size scale, it's pretty small. And so when they came to us, we looked at the list of fitness centers and we said, this is great, but our employees here who don't want to use our on-site fitness centers really can't benefit. And so they were willing to go to those locations where that may be more remote or rural, and find partnerships with fitness centers so that our employees could actually take advantage of that benefit. And that was a big draw for us. So it was earlier in when they were kind of building their brand, and they were just very, very flexible. And they even had, at the time, we had just opened a small IT hub in Northern Ireland, and they had partnered with fitness centers in Belfast. So it was one of the first benefits that we could say to that team, which is operating in a completely different structure. Hey, we have this perk that you can actually participate in as well. So that was a big driver for us with GyPass.
What about beyond physical locations? What about those employees that can't get to a gym?
Yeah, so they have a really robust online suite of applications. It's one application. Within the application, they have a suite of different types of programs that you can select from. So you can do online classes, you can do online counseling, You can do meditation, you can do yoga, they have running programs, they have weightlifting programs. So you can really kind of customize what you want to do based on, I'm a big Peloton person, and I have, as an example, I have that app on my phone. And one of the things that I like about that is regardless of where I am, I can access it. And GyPass is very similar to that. In that regardless of where you are, you can actually go into the app, and if you have programs that you like, you can do them from anywhere.
I spoke to a HR executive recently, and I said to her, why did you join? And they were like, they had an amazing fertility plan, part of the benefits
That's right.
that I couldn't see in any other companies. And I was like, oh wow, you got to think sometimes those are things that are highlighted that you don't realize that mean the most to people.
That's exactly. And I mean, we'll have people, we give all of our employees our policies for free for themselves. And so, essentially, I know it sounds silly, but that's free money, because if you have our wellness policies and you go get a physical, or you go get your eyes checked, or you go get a mammogram, if you're a woman, you get reimbursed for that. So it's not even reimbursed. You get paid a fee for going to do that. And so, that's just, it's small, it's nominal, but it's hey, here's an additional lump sum of money that you can use for whatever you need. If you happen to file a wellness claim with us, just for going to the doctor.
We spoke about sort of physical well-being so far. What about some of the other pillars of wellness that you focus on?
Yep. So from a social wellness perspective, I'll talk about financial, because I actually think, I think physical and financial sort of go together. Helping employees to maximize their earnings, I think is important. And you and I talked about this, that navigating the healthcare landscape is pretty complex. And ensuring that you're maximizing the value of the plans is complex. And so from a financial wellness perspective, we pay competitive salaries. We also have a very generous 401k, but we spend a lot of time trying to educate our employees on ways to maximize the 401k. We have a deferred compensation plan for senior leaders, so they can, defer pre-tax compensation. That's at the very higher levels of the organization. We bring in financial planning when we open up our 401k plans at the, kind of at open enrollment. We also will set up during the year wellness seminars for specific populations, for women, for other for marginalized populations, where we'll bring in someone just to talk to that specific group of people about planning, about household budget planning. And we probably do that 4 or 5 times a year, because we're trying to target different groups at different times. But it's a targeted and deliberate effort. And we've had a lot of success in the usage of our 401ks and the people actually maximizing the benefit that we offer with the 401k. So we do quite a bit around that. From a social wellness perspective, people want to work for companies that are purpose-driven and that, have an impact in the communities that they operate in. And I would tell you that we're unique in that one of our, cancer is our core product. And we actually are massive donors, and it's the Aflac, it's the Children's Hospital of Atlanta, and we have the Aflac Cancer Center. And Japan has an equivalent as well, cancer center there. And that really is one of the top organizations that our employees donate to. We'll do volunteer work in, do fundraisers for, and it's important. It's an important cause for our chairman, for our senior executives. Aflac, because we work with so many brokers and independent agents, we have what we call the Aflac Nation. I think it's about 20,000 strong, and they are massive contributors to that organization. But it really is, we walk the talk when it comes to supporting communities that we work in. We have a lot of our leaders and employees who are active on local nonprofit boards. We allow employees to take volunteer hours to engage in efforts that they're interested in. Of course, we work with United Way so that folks can donate to organizations that they want. But we do a lot of active efforts around social wellness for our employees.
Well, you kind of need that. That's another thing I'm seeing from a lot of people that I'm interviewing that we're hiring is people want to
Yep,
be part of an organization that's aligned with their purpose, right? Like
that's right.
for
That's
me, back in the day, it was all about the salary when I was younger and having a job. But it's changed now. You know,
it has.
that's no longer on the top of the pile. It's really like it's just a company that aligns with my why, vision, and purpose. And
That's right.
obviously, that's kind of there's no stronger purpose than yours in the sense of
That's right.
you're a company that's helping save people's lives and support
That's
them
exactly.
and
And,
support
it's
them through a hard time in their life.
That's exactly right. And if you and I've had the fortune to do this. If I go out to our our call centers, and I'll sit with the employees who are listening to people who are calling in with requests, and some of these people are calling in at some of the worst times in their lives
Exactly.
for a need. And this is a call center person who's talking with someone who's just potentially gotten a cancer diagnosis, and they want to understand, what aspects that what should they consider from a policy perspective and what's covered or not covered. But even at some of the best times, and when they'll talk with someone who just found out that they're pregnant, or that you talked about in vitro, and that the in vitro worked and they're able to have a child, and so they're giving them support and helping them understand what the benefits are at that point in their life as well. So, down to our frontline employees, they're involved in actually making our customers' lives better, and even our claims folks, right? So if I'm someone and I have a high cost claim for a cancer product and I'm waiting, and our claims folks, they are focused on making sure that they're paying claims as quickly as possible, because they know that people rely in many instances on that money to help to pay for things that health insurance doesn't provide.
You should share more of those stories on your website. I think
Do you know?
because I was looking for your website and
Yeah,
maybe I didn't see them. It's my fault.
we
But
have them in some places,
mhm.
and we share them very heavily internally.
Okay.
But it's great feedback. Yeah.
Yeah, I think places like LinkedIn, and telling those stories and the from employee brand perspective is so powerful,
Yes.
and impactful.
Yeah.
Obviously, I was having a look at your talent, your careers page and stuff like that, and I can see some stuff on there. But there's nothing better than you know having a
Yes.
short, 2-3 minute clip from someone of those frontline workers that are having those conversations and what it means to
That's a
them.
great idea.
You know,
That's great
it
feedback.
doesn't have
Yeah.
to. There's,
Are you looking for a job? Jay, are you?
do you know what one of the things I've been doing over the years, not even part of our offering and what we do here, is whenever I um, find those moments, I record them and just put them out there. Because even if it's not for me, even if it's for people I just speak with, because I think it's
Yeah.
important. People don't do that enough. Like, for companies sometimes overproduce stuff. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
glossy and you have to hire in a professional company. It could be someone with their mobile phone, just saying
Yes.
this is what it means to work here, and this is
Yeah.
why I value it and love what I do.
Yeah, that's actually you're absolutely right. I think it's a great call out, because we talk about it quite a bit internally. Once you're here, we talk about it all the time. We talk about it. We have, for anybody who's new to the organization, we call it induction, duck DUCK
Of
shun, which
course.
is our new employee orientation, and
Yeah,
we bring everybody into our corporate headquarters. Everybody who's hired in the U.S.
yeah.
Into our corporate headquarters. And at the induction, we spend a lot of time talking about our company purpose, our benefits, our values. We share stories. We have the cancer center come in and they share stories. We have survivors come and share stories and videos that we will broadcast then. But I don't know that we do as much from an external perspective. So it's a good call out.
How do you incorporate the spiritual well-being element into, because that's an interesting one.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I will tell you that this is the first company that I've been with that calls it out. From a fundamental perspective, it's giving people the space to reflect in the way that they believe, regardless of their religion, race, etc. And so it's about providing those locations and the time for people to have that.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the other things that we do even is from a most companies have EAP. We have that. We have it through multiple vendors. And, you talked about the oversaturation of, are people using it? And I would say that we talk about that as well, because we have our traditional EAP. We have it through GyPass. We have it through another company called NeuroFlow. But we also have a partnership with an organization here in the US called Corporate Chaplains of America. And they're a non-denominational organization, where if you want to talk to, if you're Jewish and you want to talk to a rabbi,
Oh,
they'll help
okay.
you, they'll put you in contact with someone. If you're Christian and you want to talk with a Christian leader, if you're Catholic, but some employees, and we're in the South, right? And so that's where our headquarters is. And some employees prefer to talk to a faith-based leader in times of need. So if something's happening, even if there's been, their best friend decided to leave the organization, or they've got something going on, they prefer that to
Interesting.
a traditional EAP. And we've seen that with a lot of our employees, that they actually prefer that chaplain. And we've even had, chaplains will go, they've been with employees when they've needed, a family member has needed last rites. They've been with employees when when employees got married. Like we had an instance where an employee got married and one of the chaplains actually was an officiant of the
That's cool.
service. Yeah, they'll go. We had an employee who had a very tragic loss of a close family member, and they went and counseled not only the employee but their family. They went to the funeral, so they've really gone above and beyond. And so that's one of those that it's not for everybody,
Of
right? Because
course.
not everybody wants that, and that's okay. But for the people who value that, it's a massive benefit that
Mm.
means a lot. And it's unusual, I think, that we offer that.
I don't
And
know. I don't
I
know
think,
many. I can name maybe
no,
just on two hands. There's not that many companies I know that offer that
mhm,
to employees.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's funny because we have our global investments crew in New York City, and they're always kind of the skeptics of this, and even some of them have had good success. So it's again, it's sort of about having a menu. You talked about kind of the customization. It's about having enough that people have choices to choose what they prefer, but not having so much that you have benefits that are not being utilized at all. And that's a hard balance to strike, right?
Mm.
That's a hard, it's hard to strike that, because it becomes you have to go back to why you engage that benefit provider to look at the measure of usage. So, corporate chaplains, that's not for everybody. So what do we anticipate? Do we anticipate 20% of our population will use this, 10% of our population? What is that usage rate? And then what's the quality of the people who are users? What's the feedback that we're getting?
Yeah. I love that. What would you say in your career has like been the best communication channel for these type of things? Because sometimes it's just sitting there in a intranet somewhere, no one ever sees it, right?
Yeah.
Or you're bombarding people with too many emails, and then because it's not personal, they don't read anything. What have you found as to be the most successful way of engaging and sharing that information and educating people?
Yeah, I mean, so we've done a couple things. So we have a platform called ShareCare, which is a consolidator of all of our benefits, where employees, who are tech savvy, can go onto the app and they can kind of pick and choose. That's for the more tech savvy. What I would say for kind of the probably myself, it's a little bit old school, right? It's tell them what you tell them what you told them, and tell them again. So we have multiple benefit fairs each year. We have virtual benefit fairs, we have in-person benefit fairs, not just at open enrollment but on an ongoing basis. We have wellness events, and at those wellness events, we'll not just have we have right now a wellness challenge with some of our senior executives. It's a weight loss challenge between them. We'll use that as opportunities to, when we do stories about that, to re-message those benefits, actually using some of those senior executives to be a little bit of a infomercial about some of them. We have on-site care centers here and have recently partnered with, it's called Marathon Health, to offer that service nationwide virtually. And so using some of our senior executives to do a little bit of like a commercial about the benefit of going to the centers, as well as, using the app, because it's free for our employees. It's another benefit that, if you go to the wellness center and you file a wellness claim, you got a free service. And by the way, you file that claim, you get paid for that. So it's another kind of way. But so we try to market it that way. And I also, when we hire folks at our induction, we have a benefits fair at that as well. But for me, it's really about, it's an ongoing cadence of communication. And we try to do it in clever and creative ways, but we also try to do it in just sort of pretty old fashioned ways. And just, we're going to tell you again, by the way, we're going to go to your leadership meeting. We're going to talk to your employees about it. You're having a town hall. We're offering this. We're going to come in and sit down and talk to your team about this. So it's broad, but it's also targeted at the same time.
Sure. You kind of got to hit every angle. But I'm sure probably one of the main ones is obviously then educating your leaders, right? Your managers
That's
who
right.
are, the ones that are really there with the frontline workers managing the teams day to day. They're kind
That's
of like
right.
your voice to share.
That's exactly.
I want to spin and talk about the importance of succession planning, because you spoke about that last time we spoke, and I don't think there's enough conversations happening about the importance of succession pipelining for senior leaders. Could you share your approach on that?
Yep. Yep. So we, over the last probably 12 to 18 months, I think we, like a lot of companies, have gone through a little bit of a generational shift, right? So we've had some retirements of some long tenured leaders, and that created gaps. And luckily we had a robust succession plan at the top of the house. Like, so have always been very deliberate about that. And so as these changes occurred, it was very planful, and it was kind of a little bit of a so-and-so retires, and then we're able to just move somebody in. And that's a great place to be. What it's created for us is, as we've looked down, it's created an opportunity for us to get more deliberate around that next level of leader, and what are those experiences that we want those leaders to have as we elevate them into higher level roles across the organization. And so it's been a key topic of discussion from our board, from our CEO, and from our senior executives about, who are your successors? What are we doing to grow and develop them? How are we identifying them? I think we, like many companies, people tend to have a bias towards people who are similar to them, right? And so it becomes I forget who wrote the book, but it might have been Marty Seligman, the book of, what got you here won't get you there,
Marshall
kind of a thing.
Goldsmith.
That's it. Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
No
but it really becomes what are those key competencies that we need our leaders to have at that next level, and then what are we doing to help to develop them? Because what I need to do to develop Chris might be very different than I need to do to develop Jeri, even if someone we may be listed as a successor for the same role. Our growth and development opportunities may be very different. And so the way we think about it is it's lower in the organization, those newer, earlier leaders. I don't love this word, but I can't. It's what I refer to as almost, it's more commoditized, right? It's a bigger population of people. They all need the similar foundational skills. That's where you have that kind of broad training programs, the entry-level leader programs, frontline manager, frontline supervisor, teaching them all of those foundational things. As people go up in their careers, it really becomes a combination of what's commoditized versus what's customized. And of course, the higher you go in your career, really the more customized your development and growth should be.
Mm-hmm.
It should never stop. I believe, kind of from an HR pitch perspective, but it really should be tailored to what's the next role for this person, where are their gaps in their areas and their strengths, how can we maximize those strengths, and then what are the development efforts and activities that we can do to help build that muscle. And by the way, if we learn that muscle can't be built, it doesn't mean that they're a failure. It means that we need to pivot them in a direction where they can still benefit the organization.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think leaders aren't talking about this enough? Because it seems like a very important, if not one of the most important decisions organizations are making.
I would tell you, I think it's the most important facet of my job. I think that, and it's sort of the top, and then the masses. Like I think of those
Yeah.
in the what are we doing for the most people, and then what are we doing to ensure that we've got the right leaders in the most critical positions to help the organization from a continuity perspective. And I almost think I could be wrong. This is just my hypothesis. I almost think there's a bit of vulnerability when you talk about it, right? Because it really is considered to be a competitive advantage to have a strong, robust succession plan. And when organizations start to admit that, hey, we have areas of opportunity, which by the way, we all do. But when you say that, then you're saying maybe we're not prepared for the future. And that's not true, because most good organizations think about development in a very deliberate and targeted way. Every Fortune 500 company I've been with has a succession plan. They have training programs. They have leadership development. So it's something that's going on all the time, but it's also something that's evolving all the time because environments change, businesses change. You acquire companies, you get acquired. It's so dynamic that I think, 2 years ago, you have a succession plan that looks a certain way. You think it's very, very robust. And then you have a lot of retirements or you sell off a part of the business and 5 leaders who were potentially key successors go with that business. And then all of a sudden you have a gap. And so I think that might be why, because there's just so much fluidness and dynamicness to the situation. It's an area, of course, that consultants tend to
Yes.
dig into quite a bit. And my point of view is that there are a lot of really, really good consulting organizations that can help identify potential and can help organizations assess. Most of them, I think it's sort of like, do you want a Mercedes? Do you want a BMW? Do you want a Toyota, right? They're all good. They're all going to get you where you need to go. It's what's the one that makes the most sense for your organization. They all have tools. They all have, industrial psychologists for the most part, a lot of PhDs. They all have proprietary approaches that are all very well defined and very good. But again, when you're coaching a senior leader or when you're working on development, it's not just the relationship between the two people. There are other variables at play. So I think it's about matching that vendor with the company if you're going to go in that direction.
Listen, Jeri, I think I can talk to you forever. We should have our own show at this point.
I know, this is fun.
Before I let you go, especially when around the well-being piece, which I think is really one of the key things that I've loved talking to you about, and I think it's clearly in the DNA of the organization and in the leaders, and it starts right from the beginning of the story you told me about the founders. So I love all of that. What sort of be a parting piece of advice you give to our listeners around that piece, and then also where's the best place for people to connect with you if they want to reach out to you and say hi?
Like I mentioned quickly, like I'm very fortunate in that I have a senior executive team. I work for, a company that we are focused on wellness. So the need to pitch the ROI around why these things are important is less, though I still have to. And that's what I would say to other HR leaders, which is you've got to be able to tell the story to your finance folks about what the true benefit is of offering, having an on-site clinic decreases our employee absenteeism because they can go there at lunchtime, to get a Z-Pack if they don't feel well, or they can go for their flu shot. Adding this application, or adding this fitness center, it allows people to, have lower stress, again, lower absenteeism. Tracking that data and being able to tell that story, I think, is absolutely critical. And even trying to correlate, and this is difficult, but not only do employees like it and use it, but trying to correlate do we see a difference in our claims costs? And can we correlate that back to when we actually started to introduce some of these benefits and some of these changes? So I would say that's key. And then pushing the usage around the benefits and trying to get people in those moments where they, want to find a benefit and they can find it and they can actually maximize the usage of that, and doing that in a way that meets the audience. And then to reach me, LinkedIn is probably the best way. I try to stay engaged on LinkedIn. I will tell you that, it's funny when you get certain titles, even though nothing else changes about you, all of a sudden, you go from, 20 people wanting to connect with you to 200. So I try very hard to pay attention and respond. I'm not as
No worries.
responsive, but that's still probably the best way.
Yeah, half of them are trying to chase you to sell you something, so don't worry.
Yes.
More than half, unfortunately,
Yes.
on there. But listen, honestly, I appreciate you coming on the show as well. It's
Thank
been a
you.
pleasure, and this topic's also close to my heart. We didn't even really get into it in that much detail, but I also personally struggle with my own mental health. It's something I've done for years. You didn't know this when we first spoke, but I also do a global wellbeing summit every year, and our partner is GyPass. For
Yes.
that. So I work closely with the founder and CEO and the team. So when you said that, I was that's cool.
Yeah.
And so because
We've had such a great partnership with them, and like I said, we started with them when they were relatively,
me too.
relatively early, and I think they're a bit of a pieneer with how to do this.
Yeah, I think when we first reached out, or they reached out to us, they didn't even have a corporate offering. It was just
Oh,
it was
wow.
it was like a B2C. It was just a B2C.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that long ago.
Yeah,
and
wow.
then during the pandemic, we partnered, and I think now then more than ever, we needed organizations like them that could be able to. For example, my first ever time that I sought help for my mental health and my panic attacks was actually through the GyPass app, where I booked in to see a therapist virtually. So it was a big breakthrough for me, kind of lying about it to my friends, family, wife, and being embarrassed to talk about the fact I was having panic attacks and didn't know what was happening.
Yes.
It kind of took away the stigma a little bit and allowed me to be in a comfortable place in my house where I'm jumping on a video call. It just didn't feel as scary, if that makes sense.
And and it felt more private, probably.
Yeah, and that was through GyPass
Yeah.
as well. So
Yes,
yes,
yeah.
so
That's where it really is, the trying to find, to have an offering that try to meet employees where they are. Like I said, some people want to talk to the pastor, other people want to talk to someone where it feels a little more anonymous and private, to kind of have that sort of comfort. And it's how do you do that? Because we didn't talk about mental wellness, and maybe we can at another point, because it is a massive issue, and we do our workforces report, Aflac workforces report, and burnout and mental health continue to be top challenges, especially in millennials, Gen Z. So they're big issues, and they're important issues for employers to be aware of.
Yeah, well, we'll have to do part 2, Jeri.
Yep, I would love that. I would love the opportunity.
No, I appreciate you coming on, and I wish you all the best until we next speak.
Thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate it too.